Paljon nu get ett Jamie, va?
Where should I?
Wherever you feel like.
Ehkä mä istun tähän. Eihän tässä mitään aakosjärjestystä ollut, ei, koska tässä on T ennen A. No ei, en varmaankaan. Tai, no sähän voit antaa tosta niinku yhden tommosen kynän. No anna vaan.
Vandelanotte. Yeah.
Our coordinator,
Vandelanotte. Try it. Try it either way. I will repeat it to people so they can hear it in the Flemish way. Okay.
I think she got invited or the invite to rest.
Okay. Hello. Does it work?
So I think we should be, but I'm
Does it work? Okay, good. Hello, everyone. We are slowly starting the panel on personal assistance. Please take your seats. Make yourself comfortable.
I don't know.
Uh,
Do it like this.
we have a very interesting discussion coming
Okay.
up.
I'm not.
I know sometimes it's difficult after food. You know, people were in networking mode, and some people get sleepy, some people get
I'm not
energized
Korea
with
or
food.
kebab.
But we have very nice panelists here and a very nice discussion about personal assistance for the next 90 minutes. I know all of you are familiar with personal assistance, so I will not bother you much with intros and why we discuss personal assistance. Is it one of the key pillars of independent living, one of the key pillars of deinstitutionalization, one of the key pillars of how we can take choice and control over our lives? And it's always interesting in Freedom Drive and in our webinars, people are always interested, you know, about personal assistance and how it works and what are the challenges and who is it for and all this stuff. So for that reason, we have quite a few amazing panelists. 4 of them are with me here and 1 is with us online. So without further ado, and yeah, by the way, I am Kamil Goungor. In case you don't know me, I work for ENIL as a policy and movement support officer. And with me today is Stefan Tromel, connected online, is Patrick Vandelanotte, sitting next to me, is Julia Poropat, sitting next to Patrick.
Klaudija Purhonen.
Julia, sorry. Klaudija Poropat. I don't know. I was looking at this, yeah. Sorry. Is Klaudija Poropat, thank you for connecting me, sitting next to Patrick. Is Martine Eliasson, sitting next to Klaudija. And we have Sanni Purhonen, sitting at the end of the table, if I'm not mistaken.
You're not.
Okay, good. So everyone is here in the panelists. Hopefully soon everyone will be here also in the audience, but we are already starting. In case you need anything, our colleagues will be around. Don't hesitate to reach to them if there is any emergency or any question. In the meantime, if we have Stefan with us, without further ado, I will give him the floor. So Stefan is from the International Labour Organization. And yeah, Stefan, are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Kamil?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And let me start by reacting to what you said, that all of you know what personal assistance services mean. I also know that. But I'm working in an organization where most of my colleagues who work on the general care economy are still not very knowledgeable or not knowledgeable at all about what care and support means for persons with disabilities. And so I want to start with that because I think we were still having that challenge. We've made some progress. I will speak to that, but we still have an issue of making independent living centers, personal assistance services much better known among the general people that work on the care and support economy. Now, so I will speak about the work in the ILO. I'll give you a very quick snapshot over the last 6-7 years, because when I started working in the ILO 11 years ago, there was no discussion on the care economy. It started more or less 8 or 9 years ago. And when it started, the colleagues who were working on it were mainly looking at it from 3 dimensions. One, because the huge impact it has on gender equality. Second, to look at the working conditions of care workers, because as we all know, normally the working conditions of care workers in different contexts are not ideal. And third, also in terms of if adequate public investment is made in the care economy, it can be a huge generator of employment opportunities. So these were the 3 angles that were addressed when the ILO started to work on the care economy. We came up with publication on that. From the outset, I, as a disability specialist in the ILO, reminded my colleagues that they needed to include the disability dimension into that work. But it took some time for them to fully understand the angle. Fast forward, we now have, since last year, we have the decision taken by the Human Rights Council for International Day of Care and Support. My colleagues still sometimes ask me, why care and support? What is the support element to that? It goes back to my previous comment that people still don't fully understand what this means. We have been working with other UN entities to really push the disability inclusion agenda in the general care economy discussions. Now, last June, June this year, in fact, our conference, it's our biggest meeting, it's 4,000 people usually come to that meeting. We had what we call a general discussion on the care economy. General discussions are basically a 2-week meeting of a specialized committee that deals with all relevant issues, includes all our constituents. In the case of ILO, it's governments, but also employers and trade unions. And the outcome of such a discussion is conclusions, which basically are our marching orders for the work in the next years. It's a rather short document, but I was looking at it again today, and I think we really made a lot of progress in terms of reminding colleagues, and that was of course done with the support of governments who participated in that conference and raised the disability flag in that context. Most of the reference in that document refer to care and support. When it refers to data disaggregation, and I think we still need to have better data, it really speaks about disaggregation by disability, both from a care receiver, but also from a care provider point of view. It clearly says that we need to enhance accessibility of assistance and support services for persons with disabilities to promote independent autonomy and independent living. So really very much CRPD-based wording, if I can say so. And also it refers to the fact that legislation and policies need to be promoted for care and support service for persons with disabilities with the participation of persons with disabilities themselves. Now, all of that might seem to you quite obvious, but I would say it's a major step forward in the context of an organization which has just very recently started to look at the care economy discussions through a disability lens. We have in the ILO context, when we speak about care, we have a framework through which we look at care. It's called the 5R framework, which is about recognizing the value of paid work and the rights of care receivers. It's about reduction of heavy unpaid care work, that's more for in a developing country context. It's a redistribution of care work between women and men, of course, but also between the households and governments. It's about rewarding good working conditions for care workers. And also it's about representation, and very interesting representation. Let's say some years ago, we were spoken only about representation of care workers in the discussions, but now we speak, it clearly says representation of care workers and care receivers. And this 5R framework has now been picked up also at a broader UN level. In June this year, or mid-July, sorry, the UN Secretary General launched an important policy brief on the care economy, which picks up on this 5R framework, adds a 6th very important dimension to it, which is resources. Because we know all of this will require resources. And if we really want to move to a situation where care is no longer has to be provided by informal care workers, but by paid care workers and in good working conditions and with good salary, this will require resources. Very interesting, again, the Pact of the Future, which has just been launched over last weekend in New York at the beginning of the United Nations General Assembly, for the first time in that bigger document, which really speaks about all the issues that we need to address in the future. It speaks about the care and support economy. So very interesting to see that this combined use of the terms care and support is getting hold and is being accepted. Now, Kamil, you will remember that a couple of years ago, we were at the webinar also with our colleague from the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, Facundo, and we had a discussion about whether disability organizations should or not engage in the general care economy discussion. And you had the very bad experience of the EU care strategy, if I remember well the term, which had not included any consultation with organizations of persons with disabilities. So that, to some extent, the discussion is, do we create our separate independent living personal assistance scheme, or are we part of the broader care economy discussions? And probably depending on the country, depending on the region, the solution might be different. We're having just now some discussions with colleagues in Latin America, where the whole concept of independent living is absolutely unknown, even among most people with disabilities. And they were sharing with me just a couple of weeks ago that in some of those countries, they had established already a rather small and not well-funded personal assistance scheme. And a couple of years later, they had adopted the broader care system. But the broader care system did not at all include organizations of persons with disabilities in its consultation process. It referred to persons with disabilities, but again, it did not include them. So I think this is still the discussion that we need to have. From our side, we are of course engaging in the discussions, but we're also aware of the fact that not in every country the solution might be for disability inclusion, for personal assistance services to be embedded in a broader care system. I leave it there, Kamil, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks a lot, Stefan. Thank you for setting the stage and giving a very great pass also to the next speakers, and also to talking about the distinction of care and support. And the whole discussion, we also had it in the morning with the commissioner here, and there were comments about it. So I think it's a good to set this framework here. And yeah, I remember the chat we had a few years ago, as you said, in this webinar, and the developments we have since then. There is still a lot of work to do, but we are going there, and the freedom drivers here, many of us, the work we do in our countries, go to this direction. So I think people get engaged, and this is good, and participate in the decision-making process, or at least fight for that. But now we go to the next. We go to the panelists here, and we will see examples from countries which implement personal assistance, and how they manage to do it, and if they don't, what are the challenges, or these kind of things. So I will give the floor to Martine Eliasson from Uloba. I think all of you know Uloba, and they are doing pretty good work in Norway. And Martina, what will you talk to us about?
Thank you for having me today. Today I'm going to talk about the Nordic Competence Center on Personal Assistance. I have a ginger hair, I'm wearing glasses, and I'm wearing a very colorful cardigan, and I'm wearing a brown t-shirt and black trousers. I'm going to explain what the center is and why it was established and how it can help improve personal assistance services across the Nordic countries. So why did we establish a Nordic Competence Center on Personal Assistance? Well, in countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland and Iceland, we have all similar welfare systems, and we have all ratified the UN CRPD. And the convention emphasizes the importance of personal assistance to ensure that people with disabilities can live independently and participate fully in the society. However, across these countries, the political discussions around personal assistance often focuses on cost rather than human rights and opportunities. In the politics debates, affordability seems to dominate over best practices. For example, the government in Norway and Sweden tends to compare the personal assistance scheme in the Nordic countries, but the reform prioritize to save money over ensuring high-quality services. And furthermore, in Norway, we have closed the governmental documentation center on person with disabilities in 2008, and the UNCRPD committee has pointed out that Norway is not doing enough to collect data and fund research on the implementation of the convention. Even though there is suggestion for a national center on personal assistance, we need the civil society to continue documenting the impact on personal assistance policies and pushing for more research. In Sweden and Iceland, organizations like STIL and NPA have also called for more relevant data on personal assistance. And across the region, all 5 countries have independent living organizations that advocate for personal assistance that is based on the UNCRPD. A Nordic competence center can play a crucial role by enabling EL organizations to share documentation and work together to shape personal assistance policies based on the convention and best practices. So what is the Nordic Competence Center? It was founded by the Independent Living Organization in the 5 Nordic countries, and its mission is to improve the personal assistance system by fostering cooperation, sharing experience, and exchanging research. This way, we can ensure that everyone who needs personal assistance receives the high-quality support we deserve, no matter where we live in the Nordic countries. Personal assistance is a key for people with disabilities to live independently, and ideally, everyone who needs personal assistance would receive it without obstacles. However, in practice, we know that many face barriers. By working together, we can address these challenges and find solutions. The center's main focus is to ensure that personal assistance services are of high quality across the Nordic countries. This involves conducting research and sharing what works best from each country. We are going to work together as independent living organization to share documentation, and we know that cooperation is vital in finding solutions and improving services. We aim to shape laws and policies around personal assistance. By providing research and expert advice, we can influence the political decisions, ensuring that the system focuses on independence, dignity, and fairness for all who rely on personal assistance. The ultimate goal is for people with disabilities to live independently and have the freedom of choice. Personal assistance is an essential tool for achieving this, and the center ensures that the personal assistance services remain strong and accessible for everyone. So how can the center help you? Well, the center provides research, case studies, and practical tools for policy makers, service providers, and advocates. Through events, workshops, and online platform, the center connects experts across the Nordic countries, and we are sharing knowledge, and we are working together to make a better future. If you are involved in advocacy, the center offered researchers that can make your campaign stronger and contribute to a policy reforms. We have had already our first annual meeting in May that was very closed up to the National Day on Independent Living. And then we discussed how we wanted to organize the center. We will organize this as a loose network, and we have already started working on conducting a report on the best practices from each country in the Nordic region. We have already also started to plan our next meeting that will happen in May in Helsinki next year. So our future activities, we want to offering guidance to governments and researchers on how to improve personal assistance services. We want to create a website to share relevant reports, data, and researches on personal assistance. We want to work with the researchers to study personal assistance and to develop best practices. So what can we achieve? We can achieve that local and national advocacy gets stronger because it's based on solid evidence and comparative data from all Nordic countries. We can improve the way we lobby for a better personal assistance policies and services. And we can also promote the independent living philosophy and ensure that policies are based on human rights and the social model of disability. Ultimately, the center aims to change how policymakers, researchers, and the society view disabled people, contributing for a better future for everyone who needs personal assistance. The Nordic Center of Competence on Personal Assistance is about improving the quality of life for people with disabilities by working together across borders. By sharing research, advocating for policy changes, and promoting best practices, we aim to build a fairer, more inclusive society where everyone who needs personal assistance can live independently and with dignity. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Martine, for this great presentation about the Nordic Center of Competence on Personal Assistance. And it's a great example of cooperation, of regional cooperation between different countries. Very often people think that, well, Nordic countries, they are all the same and everything works perfectly and that's it. But you explained that there is a need, for the countries. First of all, they are not the same, and second, they need to cooperate because there are still challenges. And it's great that you gave us here the example. I think I see a hand in the back. Is there something urgent we need to address? We have a Q&A later, by the way, but if it's burning, I think it's from a colleague from Sweden. Okay, we'll do exception because we know you. No, I'm kidding. I mean, we would do anyway. But I guess it's about the same topic, so...
Thank you so much, Martine. This is Jonas Franksson from Steel in Sweden. I just wanted to add that the first step to this competence center we took in 2019 here in Brussels at Freedom Drive. And that is also a good example of what we can use the Freedom Drive for, because we meet each other from different countries and we make new connection and thinking about how we can make changes. inside the ENIL, but also between different countries. So I just wanted to add that and take the opportunity tonight to start new collaboration with different countries when we are here, I think, yes.
Thanks a lot. You did well and you interrupted us because it's nice to point out, also the meaning of Freedom Drive and the power of Freedom Drive. Like Adonia said earlier, for example, in Greece we started a movement because of Freedom Drive. And, in many other countries as well. So, yeah, it's great what is happening in the Nordic countries. But very often people are coming to us and say, we want to develop personal assistants in our countries. Give us good examples. We give, I don't know, the Sweden, the Norwegian or whatever. And they say, yes, but we cannot become Sweden tomorrow. So we say, okay, you can become Slovenia. And maybe because Slovenia is from the south of Europe. And in that case, we have here with us Klaudija and not Julia, as I said before. This will count me forever, I think.
Hello, everybody.
But Klaudija Poropat from our member YHD, they have one of the best system in Europe, and it's not in the Nordic countries. So, Klaudija, how did you do it?
Very hard, very hard, and it took us 25 years. So we started in early 90s, and we thought, it will until we finish the university, and we will manage to get the personal assistance for all. But unfortunately, it took us quite a lot of time, and before the law was adopted, also a lot or most of the disabled people organizations were against personal assistance. Actually, all of those were and still are a part of National Council of Disability Organizations, and they were like restricting us and giving us bad names and not helping at all and calling us crazy and I don't know what, saying you will die, you cannot do this, you're I don't know, juggling with people's lives and so on and so on. So it was very hard, but we managed. But I talk about what kind of the law we have 2 years ago, and now we already also have a little bit more of the experience. I want to tell you also what it can happen even if you have a good law. By a good law, I mean that the principle of independent living are written in the law, that the rights of the people of personal assistance are huge. Like for the country of Slovenia, it means you can get 24 hours of personal assistance per day, and this was something never happened before. The people who had a complex need had just two possibilities: or go to the home for old people after they finish secondary school, in institutions of course, or go back to their families, and the families had to take care of them. Those were the only two possibilities of living in the community before the law was adopted. And because of that also, our organization started a program. It was called the Independent Living. And we started to be like a service provider also for ourselves, for our needs. And in our way, we learned about what personal assistance should be. And in this way, after a few years, we met ENIL. And we find out that people were doing it in the same way in other countries. And we say, oh, look, this paper looks quite like our paper. And we didn't copy it from others. We wrote it in our own way. But it was talking about the same things that papers of Adolf, John, and ENIL were talking. And also later we meet Jamie, and we got a lot of support in education and also in lobbying. But to make it short, why I'm telling this? Because our history is important. Our history is important. We must know why personal assistance is in the way like it is. It's not something what felt out of the sky just because people are disabled and needed it. It was something what was longed for and what we really wished for to have and also fought for. But like I said, when the law was adopted, when it was closer to the date of the implementation, more and more organization popped up as new service provider of personal assistance. At the beginning of the 2019, there was, more than 200 service providers. And they all say, we are the expert of personal assistance in Slovenia. We know what personal assistance is according to the law of personal assistance. But most of them, unfortunately, didn't. And what happened? It happens that the things which are not personal assistance, things like care, are now carried out under the name of personal assistance. This was something we heard yesterday. Our terminology was hijacked, but also our service was hijacked in that point of view. And most of the service providers in Slovenia are providing personal assistant are as care at home, or in a way that that it's not okay. That also means that in a name is the same, the employment is the same, the workers are called personal assistants, but there are these small differences that tells you it's not personal assistance. For example, who is responsible for your own PAs? Some care providers are those who are responsible, and the users are just using personal assistance. So they're not the one responsible for their own team of PA. Who is doing the timetable of their PAs? Most of the service providers are doing the timetables of the employed PAs, not the users are doing the timetables of the working hours of the PAs. Who is reporting about the using the hours of PAs? In our organization, the user is responsible about reporting of how many hours it used, and the workers must just say, yes, this is true what the user says. I was working at that and that hour there. The Ministry for Social Affairs wants the PAs to report the hours of working by users. And we are the only one organizations now in Slovenia not using the system they put, because we said we will not use it until the user will be the one putting the data about her own PA inside the system. So we are still waiting. Maybe the fine will come very soon, because one of the fine is also that you can lose the status of being a service provider. That's also one of the fine the ministry said. And then I could go on and show you this small difference between care and personal assistant and how it is carried out in Slovenia. But unfortunately, I did not look at the time. You had to stop me, I guess. There are also some other things I want to say. And one it is that, like you see, the care took over personal assistance. But unfortunately, in Slovenia, happened also that the family members took over the personal assistance of disabled people, unfortunately. There are now approximately about 4,000 users of personal assistance in Slovenia, and the average of hours is 80 hours per week. This is the average, but we can have from 30 a week to 24 a day. So it's like the average is 80 hours a week. And there are 8,000 personal assistants are employed, permanently employed. And also, but half of the 8,000 personal assistants are family members. So you see that this became a problem, not because the family members are personal assistants, but because the family members performing personal assistance does not know the difference between being a personal assistant and being a family member providing things your child or family member needs in every day. So this became a problem, and I think that we also had to do some discussion on this point. Maybe this is also because of the nature of the culture. Maybe some things are also connected to the culture. I guess also in Greece and Italy and these mama's countries, we say, mama country, the problems are higher than in Scandinavia country, where we have these examples that personal assistants came and women get liberated from the obligatory care at home. So we were looking forward to this, to your solution, but in mama's country it goes in other way. In mama's country nobody is good enough as mama is. So I'm talking mama, but it's not just mama, it's also other family members, you know. It's and like I said, it's not a problem if the family members would knew the difference between personal assistance and caring for your family member. But usually they don't. They think that they do and they know what's better for their family member, and this is not independent living. In independent living, even if I'm wrong, I had to do it my way. But I must also take the responsibilities for the consequences of my wrong decisions. But I have the right to choose also something what you think it's wrong for me. We also thought that this happened because there was no other services in the community available. So we are really also working in hand of hand or trying to work also on other services in the community, because then maybe it will be more clear what's personal assistance, what's care at home, what's a companionship, what's some other way of the services needed, perhaps. One of the problems of the Slovenian law is also that not all disabled people are included. We must say it now loud, because 5 years after the law it was adopted, people after the age of 65 are excluded because the government said that they will be cared of. I hate the word care. Cared of in the long-term care law. The long-term care law was adopted, but actually it was not even made a pilot project on the disabled, and it offers only 35 hours per week to a person. That means that all the persons with disability, with complex need, are excluded and had to go into institutions. Even if we are doing the DI process. We have the third strategy already. Nick knows now a little bit more about it. We were involved only as watchers when we are invited to see what they plan for us, which is horrible, like Antonia, like in Greece, you know. But they can do like attack. The civil society was informed. They know what is going on. But we were not asked about the prepositions, even if some of us have the experience of living in institutions and know the difference about institutions and living independently in your home. We know it, and we also, because of that, we also recognize it when the state wants to do some services, which are our services, in a way like they're done in institutions. In the last law proposal of changement of personal assistance law, the ministry had this idea about making just one national public service provider for personal assistance, where personal assistants will have standards and normatives about what they can do or what cannot do. And of course, the people using personal assistance had to oblige them if they want to use personal assistance. But we say, no, this is no personal assistance. This is care. This is no personal assistance. This is no living independently in a home. So we had a talk about before, we heard a talk about before about the things that were done in ILO. But again, you hear care and support. Personal assistance and support is something completely different than care and support. Yes. You know? If we want to do the services in a way that they are concentrated on individual disabled person, then it cannot and will never be done in a way of standards and normatives. It's impossible. This is something what breaks our rights. And I have to say that sometimes we are really in need of more flexible employment policies when it comes to the services in the community. Like, for example, I don't know, I will give you one small example. Now you have this, now this law about that you should not be disrupt when you are not working, you know. Your employer should not call you if you are not on work. But if you are a support person in services in the community, your work does not finish at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes you don't have to work for the whole day, but sometimes in one day you are called 3 or 4 times because it's an issue and a crisis. And I think that this is something very important what we should also begin to talk on ENIL about how to achieve and how to be prepared to do this kind of services, but in the coordination of labor rights. We are not breaking labor rights. Some of our personal assistants are working with us more than 20 years. If we would be such a, I don't know, bad employer, probably they would not stay with us more than 20 years. But in personal assistance is something that it cannot be written down about what kind of abilities personal assistants must have. It's something, sometimes it clicks and sometimes it not clicks. And some personal assistants are good for me and some it will be good for you. But this does not mean that yours is also good for me. He's not a good or a bad personal assistant. He's good personal assistance for you and a good for me. It's something what it's different and it cannot be measured. You cannot do a line and say this is okay and this is not okay. So I think we should do more talking also about this. What kind of employment we need to fulfill these people-centered services, because sometimes it is impossible. I guess I'm over.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, I will just say one thing. What also can happen is that the hour rate for personal assistant does not cover the cost of personal assistance. Okay. And this happened in the last 2 years in our organization. And we will now have probably, we must sue the ministry to get the money for the last 2 years. Otherwise, we will bankrupt next year and we could not work anymore next year. And it's also happening because there is no difference in hour rate for one who needs not so complex personal assistance and one who needs more complex. And then we have a big problem. So I say back to base, back to convention. The translation also of convention is important. The Slovene translation is bad. The Slovene translation goes into a caring about people, not in right-oriented convention. Not just the translation is a problem, also the interpretation, how you interpret any of the articles. And the most important, we must stay and be the watchdog about how it is implemented. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Klaudija. As you said, indeed, you get a bit over time, but I was looking at the audience and they were not even breathing to listen what you were saying, so focused. So I think it was worth it.
Sorry. 1 second.
Okay, we'll continue.
You have, we published this handbook for, like a manual for personal assistance.
It is also on our website.
Yeah, and with help of ENIL, we translated it.
Wow.
So, and it's free to download on the on our website, I guess. But Doman, who is also one of the author, the biggest author, I said always the YHD is the author. So it's had the leaflets, and you can download it with how to say, from the website with clicking on the connection. So please just use it. Those are true things that happened in real life in our 25 years of doing personal assist or learning how to doing. I'm still learning.
Yeah. So thanks again, Klaudija. Indeed, the manual is really great. The handbook, I have read it, and it's easy to read, and it has a lot of examples. So I encourage everyone to read it. Maybe not everything is applicable to every national context because of different legislation, but the philosophy and the idea, it's the same. So I encourage everyone to read it. And thank you, Klaudija, for pointing all these different aspects of the Slovenian law, the good and the bad ones. I saw a lady on the third table raising her hat at some point, but I kindly suggest that we take the question after we finish with the speakers, just to be sure you know how much time we have and to keep the pace. And we will come back to you, I remember you. So I will give you the floor after the speakers finish, if that's okay with you. And having said that, I will give the floor to going back to Nordic countries. The plane continues to the north again, to Finland this time, and to Sanni Purhonen from our members of the Threshold. And yeah, it's a very interesting case because Finland is not as famous in our work as Sweden or Norway. So I think it will be very interesting to hear what's happening in Finland.
Yeah.
And yeah, how many similarities or differences they are with what we heard already from the different speakers these days. Sanni, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. Say if the microphone is in a bad, maybe I'll just lean forward like this so everyone will hear me. So first I will describe myself. I'm a woman with messy hair and a blue shirt that says my other disability is a tendency to riot. Also on back, it's a slogan from Disability Artist, and it's a shirt by Jenni Julia Wallinheimo and other disability artists based on Finland. I'm also a poet myself, so I dabble with these kind of things as well. And I use a wheelchair, and I have black trousers and brown shoes, even though you cannot see them right now. But yeah, now I remember to describe myself. And I'm very happy to be here to, as many of you have commented on during these days, oh, it's so nice to have someone from Finland here. And I tend to feel a little pressure to describe the whole situation of all Finland. I could say that there are many points that the previous speakers had that I could also take on. For example, we are, to my understanding, we as a threshold are a part of the Nordic Competence Center that you were talking about, Assistentti.info, which is our part that is specializes in personal assistance. But I was asked to describe the situation specifically on personal assistance with school and working life. So I will have few points on those, and I also have a lot of scribbling here that I made notes during the previous speakers, so I will try to remember everything, and someone will say once I've used my 10 minutes, hopefully. Also because I have to leave at the airport in 3:30, so I have time until so. But yeah, but in Finland, same as in many other countries here, on paper you of course have, and by law you have your personal assistance for work and for school. You have to have the amount of hours you need. That's on principle. Whether the principle is always practice is a whole another matter, as has been brought here also. And if I think about work specifically, you also have to have by law reasonable accommodations. For example, for me, as a person who goes to work, a reasonable accommodation is an elevator, so pretty reasonable. But even if it would be something that only one person needs, if they need it, it's a reasonable accommodation. And key word here is reasonable. So none of those firms are gonna go bankrupt if they have the reasonable accommodations in order. But the lack of knowledge of this can be seen in a Finnish labor market, because when I say that, oh yeah, we get all the things that we need, with the same breath I have to say that in Finland currently only about 20% of the disabled people who would be of working age are part of the workforce. Let that sink in. You know, we are so supposedly so ahead of everyone else, and 80% of disabled people are not even working. So that can tell you that we have a system, but we also have problems. And I'm one of those angry people who is always pointing out the problems. But anyway, that's why I'm here. And of course, at the Threshold Association and at Assistant.info, we people contact us usually once they have the problems. So I only know the sad side of things. None of the disabled people who are working happily are contacting us, of course. But in any case, from the data that we have, and we don't have enough data. That's one of the problems. But from the data that we have, we know that not enough disabled people are working. Not enough disabled people are, for example, able to go through with their university studies. For example, there can be a lack of accommodation. I know personally of people that have dropped out because of the lack of accessibility. So this is the reality. I know disabled experts who have had to say no to a job because they didn't get enough hours of personal assistance, or they do not find a person who's a good match for them. That's big part of the problem, and of course that's part of the problem that we will also want to tackle together with the Nordic Cooperation Center. So and law can be helpful. For example, not so long ago in Finland there was this case that went to the court where a person didn't get the job because they had a personal assistant, and the job would have entailed confidential info, and the person who was hiring was telling, oh no, the personal assistant is gonna blabber to everybody this personal info, we cannot hire you. And of course this was and is discrimination, as we all know. Personal assistants have to have a professional secrecy, same as in any job. So the good news is that this case was a good case because it was said that this is a discrimination and in the law. So now we can show that case as one example that, oh no, you cannot do things like that. But of course it would be nice if you wouldn't always have to be going to the courts as means to get your human rights, you know. But anyway, as we have heard during these days, the situation in reality can be something totally different. But of course, if you have a personal assistant in your workplace, they help you move, for example, moving around in the workplace, getting into the workplace, any stuff like that. But the disabled expert is expert themselves. So the assistant does not do the work for you, as we here in this room, I think all know. But this is one of the areas of that general population is not so knowledgeable about. They say, oh, you have assistants. Oh, your assistant does your work. Oh, that's so nice. And I'm like, no, I'm educated person, you know. But yeah, that's a relatively common misconception, actually. I think people are stupid sometimes. Yeah, but anyway, what else did I have here? Yeah, and for example, I can use myself as an example. Also, of course, it was a long time ago when I was a university student, and the personal assistant at that point was not subjective, right? But I have been thinking nowadays that when I was a student, I wouldn't have dared to apply for a student exchange program because I would have thought, oh no, that's too much of a hassle. And even nowadays, I sometimes catch myself thinking about this and that and other thing. Oh no, that's too much of a hassle. So that's basically your everyday life as a disabled person, but it shouldn't be that way, of course. The law should be on our side, and the laws should be based on human rights and not the idea of services, of service. And of course, here, as many of you here have said, I also hate the word care. It's not about care. It's about helping us to fulfill our potential as people and our human rights. So yeah, but what else was I gonna say? There is a discrimination on capital letters here. Okay, but yeah, but for me, because it's been so great being here, and as I said before, everyone coming over to me say, oh, you're Finland. In Finland, oh, we look up to you. Oh, in Nordic countries, everything is so well. And I'm like, what? What country are they talking about? So, you know, my employers are not probably gonna like this, but I'm just saying that in Nordic countries, I think in generally, and in Finland definitely, we cannot be complacent. We need more ambition with disability rights, with personal assistance, because I see that we are going backwards. There, as in many countries, we have now a right-wing government who would like to cut from the disability services. The Disability Act is actually, I think, today on the floor of the parliament, and many people are afraid of what's that gonna look like. And what is also sad is that some of those groups are fighting amongst themselves about the benefits of this disability group and that disability group, and legislation from my point of view and legislation from your point of view, instead of thinking about human rights for everyone, not diagnosis. So, I'm very critical of Finland at the moment, and I see many countries that we would have to learn from at the moment, and we have lots to learn from at the moment, and that's why I'm so happy about our cooperation. It's so important, because if we don't come together, no one else is gonna do that for us. I tend to get somehow emotional and overexcited with these things, but that's how it is. So I think that was that paper. And of course, I can also answer if there are some specific questions about school and employment and personal assistance. But in principle, the message is that on paper everything should be fine, but on practice everything is going to shit. Okay. I'm a negative person. But anyway, then when I came here, I got this aha moment that, okay, if everyone else is angry too, then maybe we have some hope. So I like angry disabled people. I'm an angry disabled person myself, and I would like to say about those the lack of that the personal assistance in itself is not enough, because the lack of hours and again also the lack of people are big problems. And for example, one of my colleagues at Threshold told me that if you don't have enough hours, even your own home turns into institution. And that's true. What can you do in your own home even if you don't get the assistance? So that's one of the happy messages that I'm bringing you from sunny Finland. But yeah. So, but I do think that we also have the point that we are here shows that we also have hope, and we have all the possibilities, and we have all the tools to make the change and to keep the change on the good level and to go to even better level. So I'm not only negative with all these things, but we cannot do it by ourselves. We have to do it together. And us as Nordic countries that have had it good for a long time, again, we cannot think that this is gonna last, because it can be taken away just like that. And it partly has already been taken away with the budgetary cuts and with these kind of problems that we have. But we just have to keep fighting back and also implement the good solutions from other countries. Nordic countries are nice, but Nordic countries are not always the best with the employment and such. Okay, so was that 10 minutes?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sanni. Thanks a lot. Probably it was a bit more than 10 minutes, but no worries. We are good. And I thank you for this, honest and personal touch in the discussion and in your speech. I think it was greatly appreciated, and it gives one more image of what it means to, what stereotypes are about different countries and what people think, but what is the reality. And we have so many experiences here in the room that if we could ask each one of you, we could hear so many different and interesting stories. One more of this is coming now. We go a bit, we take the plane and we go a bit southern to the place we are now at the moment, to Brussels. We have Patrick Vandelanotte. I hope I didn't kill the name. And Patrick will talk to us about Belgium, about Brussels maybe, and about, what else, Patrick?
Okay, good afternoon to you all. I started yoga 2 weeks ago. So just breathe in, breathe out.
Okay.
Breathe in.
He will not talk about good things.
Breathe out. Okay. Okay, I'm very glad to be here to participate at the Freedom Drive. And I'm aware that's easy to say from me because I live and work in Brussels. So great respect for you all to come here to Brussels. And thank you for bringing all this energy, this positive energy here. So I will share our experience of a court action we successfully conducted to improve the access to personal assistance. And so I'll try to give you some energy back and to give you some hope back. As a coordinator of GRIP and as a parent of a daughter who uses personal assistance, I'm part of a team who's leading strategic litigation. And to be clear, I'm not a legal expert, but I'm convinced that we need to bring our rights, our human rights, from the convention into the courtrooms. And for that, as civil society, we have to work together with legal experts. Mostly we don't have the budgets to engage them in our teams, but we work together with them. So just pointing out, GRIP is a human rights organization and an organization of disabled persons. And Katrijn Ruts is here with me, is a colleague also of the team, and she can assist me in answering your questions in front here of at the coffee. Okay. In short, what we did is that we turned back a reduction in the budget for personal assistance. This was a result of a clear choice our board of GRIP made to engage in strategic litigation to protect our rights as persons with a disability. That was what we did. So, okay, no, I explain it a little bit more. Let's see how this works. Okay, now you're seeing a picture and you're seeing Jos' house. This is what you're supposed to have seen, Jos talking to you. So I want to start by honoring Jos' house. Jos supposed to do this presentation, but Jos died during the summer. So what I'm presenting here was only possible because the work of Jos' house. Jos was a pioneer in advocating for personal assistance in Flanders, and he joined GRIP as a legal expert. It was Jos who started the whole case I'm presenting, and along the way he was involved and provided the team with his calculations, minutious calculations, and his juridic experience. So it doesn't feel good for me to have to replace him here, but I do it with a great respect for Jos. On the picture you see now, you see some people of GRIP, some individuals too, and 2 lawyers. That's very important. They are dressed for the occasion, the lawyers. They have a toga. They say they have a toga. So they are dressed for the occasion. This is for me a very meaningful picture. Disability is about rights, and when we need it, we go to court. Very, very strong, meaningful picture for me. So I tried to explain the case we won. It's a juridical case, so boring to explain, but I try. Okay. A couple of years ago, an update was made to a new method to calculate the amount of personal budget in Flanders. This was called actualization. The purpose was to save money, that's clear. Okay. At the same time as this actualization, the decision was made to automatically transfer people who had been on the waiting list for several years under an old budget category to transfer them into a new budget category. For the most, this resulted in a significant reduction in their budget. In 2021, GRIP challenged this update of the personal budgets before the Belgian Council of State. And almost 3 years later, in its ruling of 8 January 2024, the Council of State cancelled the articles we challenged in what they called the mosaic decision. So we changed the rules. The Council of State ruled that the measure was in violation of the Belgian Constitution and the standstill principle contained within. This principle stipulates that the government cannot significantly reduce the level of social protection without being able to prove that it is doing so for reasons of public interest. So the result of our legal action was that the Flemish government was forced to reinstate the original budget of everyone who saw their personal budget reduced, with retroactive effect. So the government had to pay back the reduction that they calculated. On the next photo, the first photo was when we started the progress. This was 3 years later, in front of the same door of the Council of State. Now we stood with 30 persons. Now, why was it successful? The first thing that was very important is that GRIP decided to start strategic litigation. It was not just one idea, no, we had a clear vision. We wanted to start strategic litigation because for protecting our rights as persons with disabilities, awareness raising, information and lobbying was not successful enough. So to be clear, we do not organize legal aid, but we invest in strategic cases to achieve law reforms or to reverse new laws that create a backslash. So it's a systematic way to do court cases, not on individual basis. So the situation was, in principle, the system of direct financing developed in Flanders was a good system, but there are long waiting lists, which means that not all persons in need of support can make use of the system. So the goal of our litigation strategy is to force the government to make the waiting list disappear and to realize a strong right for support and personal assistance. The first important step was the decision of the board to engage in this strategic litigation, and the second step was to build up expertise so we could set up successful strategies. Those steps were taken in 2019 and 2020. And then in the first months of 2021, Jos Huis detected the problem of the actualization. And we started to ask questions to the government and the politicians. Very important. We didn't start a court action. We started to ask questions to government and politicians. But for them, the case was closed. So the board of GRIP decided to start a court action and to provide the necessary budget together with calls for funding. We managed to work together with a good team of lawyers, people from Progress Lawyers Network. At first, they didn't have the knowledge, the experience about a specific topic, but they had experience in strategic litigation, and they were driven by a human rights approach, and they were interested in working closely together with Jos and with other members of the GRIP team. So this was a good collaboration. As a strategic choice, we also involved several individuals in the law case. They added their personal complaint to the legal case we made, and so they gave a face to the case. And we also organized a broader involvement, including press releases, personal testimonies in social media and press, and support actions. And also continuing exchange with members of the parliament. As the whole procedure lasted almost 3 years, we needed to keep the case warm. Also with new documentation and arguments, and with strong reactions on the contra-arguments. A very significant action, and that is the picture, was a presence of more than 40 persons in the courtroom on the moment of the meeting of the Council of State. We captured this event with a Facebook Live to have more people following it. Now I'm showing a cartoon. We did some cartoons at GRIP, and you see a hill, and above the hill, human rights, text human rights. And it's a long, long, long way to get these human rights. So we know we have a long way to go. After the ruling of the Council of State of 8 January, further steps needed to be taken. First, we had a follow-up to the reaction of the government. We were not sure what they were going to do, but on short term, we asked them for full payback, what indeed took place. Then we paid attention to restore the dialogue by a meeting with the minister in which we discussed further collaboration to avoid court law cases, because this is not our strategy. This is only when we don't agree or if we don't participate. And then we keep up pressure with other strategies. For instance, awareness raising of the new parliaments, new members of parliaments, on the importance of personal assistance, and also keeping up actions on the street for the right to support. Also, now this case is over, we keep in contact with legal experts as we organize a network on disability and human rights. So I think my time is up. I try to conclude. Our court action was successful. We were very happy. It's not always so, but we were very happy. It was not a one-time shot. It was a clear strategy of the board of GRIP, alongside with other actions and in collaboration with individuals and legal experts. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Patrick, and thanks a lot to all of you. And yeah, I remember Adolf Ratska was saying, see you in the court. And it's very important we hear more and more. We had a personal assistance watch session a few weeks ago about the personal assistance and the legal actions, and we had 3 experts from different countries speaking about personal assistance and why the legal actions is important and why it's important to fight in the court for our rights. And just activism is not enough very often. So it was very good, and thank you, Patrick, for that, to bringing this case to our panel and to the Freedom Drive, because many people ask us very often, how do we do it? What can we do to get our rights? Well, being loud and proud, or it's very good and it's very important. Being visible is very important, but being active legally is also very important. So thank you for bringing this to our attention and to saying that it is possible. Now we have around 20 minutes. I was informed that we got 10 minutes bonus. So we have 20 minutes around 20 minutes for discussion, questions, and anything you would like to share or to ask. Do you still want to ask something? I see a hand from Runar in the back. Okay. Who is there? Okay, we'll give to everyone. Runar is next to the TV, by the way, behind Rita. And someone is here also. We'll give floor to everyone, no worries.
Yeah, hello? Hear me? Yeah,
yes,
now?
Perfectly.
Okay. My name is Runar, I'm from Iceland, and I have a question about, I'm not sure this is the right place, but if you are moving between countries, I would like to know, for temporarily, like for school or for work, like some government work or something like that is temporarily, is there some kind of collaboration on how to do that, or is there some way to do it? Or I would like to know how others do it.
You mean when it comes to personal assistance?
Yes. Yeah, regarding personal assistance, because maybe you cannot take with you all of your personal assistants, and how can you hire a personal assistant in another country? That's the thing. It's,
okay. How much time you have? We need 2 days to discuss that. No, I mean, thank you for the question. It's a very big issue. ENIL is working on the issue. I don't know if my colleague Florian is here because he would be the best expert to answer this question. Florian, are you here? Ah, Jamie, I see Jamie is pointing in the back. So somewhere there is hiding someone. So, because I mean, I could say a few things, but we have better people to say. Yes?
Do you hear me? Hello, hello. Yeah, I'm not the expert, but I know, for example, there are some people who have come with their studies to the university in Sweden and have been able to get personal assistance and stay. So it's through the network to find out who these people are and then connect you to find out what their story is, to know how they've done it. I wouldn't know right today, but I would know a couple we could ask, for Sweden anyway. I don't know about the other countries.
Thank you. There is Nico. A second, because I see like 5 hands at the same time.
If I might just complete a little bit, I know, for example, in Belgium, the Netherlands, and in France, if you come to the country to study, you need to you are not recognized. That's also one of the battles of ENIL, the freedom of movement. When you go from one country to another country, you are not recognized as a person with disability, so you need to be reassessed, and then you need to go to a whole the procedure to be recognized as a person with disability, and then only then, if you became recognized by law, then you can have access to the other social facilities and ask for personal assistance and others. But it will take you really, really long time before I have it, and then you can end up also on a waiting list. So it's not obvious that you go to a country and you have it. And so that is one of the biggest demand that we always have within ENIL, to have that freedom of movement. So it's not reality yet.
Thank you, Nadia. And indeed, there is a lot of advocacy from our work about the freedom of movement and the European Disability Card, maybe in the future, to play this role. I see there is a lady here in the middle of the room. The floor is yours.
I'm Petra Stokar. I come from Holland, and I've been studying in England, and I know it is possible, but you have to ask permission in your country and say that you have to have proof that you are registered at the school, and then it is easily possible to get money to study. You can take your budget with to study in another country.
Thank you for sharing this experience. I also know a friend who left Greece to work in Austria, and she continues gets money from Greece. But that's from what I know, on average, it is quite difficult to achieve. And in general, freedom of movement is not very easy. And I mean, she's not recognized in Austria in that case. She's continuing to be recognized in Greece, but she lives in Austria, which is also problematic in some ways. And thank you for sharing the experience of Holland and UK in that case. Ines, I think, wanted to share something. Okay, so Ines is covered. Nicola, you wanted to ask something? I saw a hand before.
I don't think so.
Okay. Simone also?
I think, yeah, Nicola wanted to.
Okay, so Nicola, and then Simone. No, okay. Simone.
Okay. Hi, it's Simone Aspris from Free Our People campaign. I'm just interested in how much we've given it any thought and representation of people with learning difficulties, intellectual disabilities, social disabilities coming here today, in terms of ensuring there is representation, because it has felt that it's been very much about the experiences of, it feels, personal assistance, all we need is personal assistance to get out of institutions in order to have a fulfilled life. And I'm just mindful that, you know, we've got parents here parents here that are coming to speak on our behalf as well. So I just wondered whether whether we can think about for the next Freedom Drive, we actively try and actively, you know, get some speaking up groups, some self-advocacy groups to come along here as well to speak, because I think that'd be really, really helpful, because then I think we would get a much wider perspective. So I was going to ask each one of you, how you are working with people who might have very high needs, who may not be in a position to self-direct their support in the way that people with physical and sensory impairments might. So relying on nutritious support, proactive support from the PAs as well. So I just wondered, you know, have you managed to engage with people where there may not be the high level of self-directed support that they would be expecting, and just share some thoughts around that?
Thank you, Simone. So you said you will ask each of the presenters. So I will give the floor to Sanni, and we go next after Sanni to Patrick. It's one by one. Yeah, for everyone. So Sanni, you start, and then each of you. But please be brief so we can go to next questions.
Well, just briefly, of course, Threshold Association is not a diagnosis-based but human rights organization, and we have had some cases where there have been, to my knowledge, also other than physical or sensory disabilities with the people in those situations. So we do also give our help and expertise to them and try to take it account, and also in the new Disability Act, if it would be implemented the right way, it would be more in line with the CRPD and give more options also to other groups than only physically and sensory disabled people, which are overtly seen also in our own action. That's very much true. This is a problem and we have to acknowledge it.
Thank you. Martine.
Yeah, in the Nordic Competence Center on Personal Assistance, we also have, we are working together with YAG assistants that mostly have a person that have intellectual disability that rely on personal assistance. And I know we had one person in our first meeting that were living independently in her home because of personal assistance, but I agree on that we need more representative of people with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities in our work.
Thank you. Klaudija.
I wanted to say that before we accepted the law, we really thought that when the personal assistance will come in life, the DI is solved. We thought that the people would move out, had assistance, and everything would be nice. But nothing like this happened, of course. Only maybe a small number of people moved out of institutions because of personal assistance. The people in institutions need quite more than just personal assistance, I guess. And like I said, because of the lack of other services in the community, everything became personal assistance in Slovenia, even what it is not. In our organization, we try to, before the law passed of personal assistance, we tried to push forward the system of like trust person for people with intellectual disabilities to fulfill their choices, but the government say no. So they're people with intellectual disabilities are included, but only if legal representative agrees, which is in some case it is a problem because sometimes the legal representatives are parents and they don't agree that their family member could live in the community with personal assistance. They think it's too risky, even if the person would like to try. And we also sometimes try to get other kind of support, whatever is available on the basis of what person needs. But like I said, not much is available in Slovenia in the community except personal assistance.
Thank you, Klaudija. And Patrick?
Thank you for your question. It's a very important issue. Three little things. At first, I'm not representing my daughter. If she wants to talk, she talks for herself. Okay. So in Flanders, at several times, we saw that the government tried to exclude persons with intellectual disability from personal assistance schemes. So we had to be aware of this danger. There's also the idea that persons with intellectual disabilities need to live in group homes and they cannot live independently. So that idea is a very strong idea. Also in the idea of deinstitutionalization, it's not about those people, they think. Okay. Then a second thing, in our own organization, we include persons with intellectual disabilities, and we provide them with coaches to prepare reunions, to have a reading on their own, and to have the interaction with us. So we try to work on this. There's an issue. We are not totally a group of self-advocates with intellectual disabilities, but we work together with the group, Onze Nieuwe Toekomst. So we take this in account. And then the question is, how do they manage to do the whole work about personal assistance? We have some good practices of a support group or family in an informal way supporting. So I just talked about it with Paul. Hello, Paul. Paul said, all this administration, my family helps me with it. So it's possible to live in a community with personal assistance and to have some help, informal or formal. So there are some formal support groups also for people, yes.
Thank you also, Patrick. Just to say also from the ENIL perspective, very quickly, thank you, Simone, for the question. For ENIL and for the Freedom Drive, as you can probably see during these days, the people and the participants is a very diverse audience. We have people of all the impairment spectrum, and we give the floor, we try to give the floor, to everyone to speak during the presentations and during the workshops and during the also the questions and Q&A. We do the same with webinars and with our events. Our board members, our youth board members, our staff are people who belong also to people who have either intellectual impairments or autistic people or people with other psychosocial impairments. So we try to be, a cross-disability movement in practice to do what we preach. But okay, I stopped talking because it's not about me and Enid, it's about our speakers. Who was next? I see Petra again a comment and Sebastian. I start with Sebastian because he didn't speak, and you take next.
I had 2 or 3 things to say to the speakers. One of my realizations was, Klaudija, your PA leaflet or book. It's a big book. I flipped through it. I think this is a case study and a best practice of what we should be doing much more. Sharing the experiences and compiling case studies and sharing them across all the countries, learn from one another. So that's also something you guys do in Norway or in the Nordics with the Nordic Center. I think would be great if everybody else would have access to a lot of what you do.
Patrick, thanks a lot. I got the Christmas present from your court action, a retroactive payment of some of my assistance budget. And Sanni, I noted down as a sentence, I like angry disabled people, the sentence of the Freedom Drive 24. We should print it on T-shirts for 2026. And my quick question to all of you was, I'm very curious on, in some countries, family members are excluded from being assistants, and in other countries, family members are included. You call them mama countries. I like that, but there's also the risk of families or family members becoming the only, or the disabled person being the income generator for families. So maybe each one of you could very briefly say how it is handled in your country, and what is the pro and the con of the situation in your country.
Thank you, Sebastian. The thing is, we have 2 minutes to finish the session because our interpreters and everyone needs some break also. So I will give the floor to all of you, but like 30 seconds each of you.
30 seconds. Two thoughts. First, thought of Adolf Ratzka, who pointed out the difficulty in engaging family members. He said, I engaged 2 personal assistants and I lost 2 wives. So it's a tricky thing. In Belgium, in Flanders, you can do it as parents couple. Then one of the parents couple should be the administrator, and the other could be engaged as a mom or a dad. It's more or less like this, I think.
Thank you. Klaudija, but quick.
In Slovenia, first there was no limitations, but this went in for huge dimensions. So now there are limitations, maximum 2 family members. But we think even this is too much.
Thank you, Klaudija.
In practice in Norway, mostly you hire assistants that you don't know or are your friends, and if you need it, you have like family members on call in emergencies.
Supplement.
Yeah, supplement.
We are for supplements.
Thank you, Martine. Sanni?
Yeah, family members or even friends are not supposed to be your personal assistants. There are few exceptions. I haven't had a chance to say in this discussion that I'm not a lawyer, but I think it was implied I'm not a lawyer. But to my understanding, there can be some exceptions, but it's heavily not in favor of family members being personal assistants because of all the problems mentioned here before.
Thank you for answering quickly the question. Normally we are over. I think if there is not something super burning, something really wanting to ask something last, I will close the session here. Okay, I don't see anyone urgently asking for the floor. So thank you all for attending this session on personal assistance. Thank you to Stefan, to Sanni, to Martine, to Klaudija, and to Patrick for being here on the panel.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the interpreters. Thank you also to the interpreters, captioners, and the staff who is helping with everything. Enjoy the break now for the 30 minutes, and we come back at 3:40. No?
attention, please. The die-harders who stayed, who survived, and are still awakened with us. Come closer.
Thank you, Nadia. Hello, everyone. My name is Melike and I'm from Turkey, and I am a third-year law student at the Social Sciences University of Ankara Faculty of Law, and I have been a youth board member of ENIL Youth Network since November of 2022, and my main interests are intersectional disability activism, which intersects with feminism and rights of young disabled people. And I'm really honored to be invited to this panel today and to talk a little bit about the independent living pillars and I think what we can do as a continent, as a whole Europe, from my own local and national perspective. I could say that we need to shift our focus from globally focusing on care rather than starting to focus on personal assistance, rights, dignity, and independent living instead. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that all of our partners, including United Nations, European Union, and relevant funders are aware of the disability rights and human rights abuses that happen in institutions, and they need to deliberately choose to support right type of organizations. Disabled-led and disabled-founded organizations are a trailblazers in advocacy and those type of work that we are doing, and give the main stage to them instead of focusing on organizations who focus on rehabilitation and who are not disabled-led and disabled-run. And to a little bit add to that point, I also think it is very important to include young people with disabilities in discussions of independent living and personal assistance. Because when we think about supporting and creating personal assistance systems, we often don't think young people well enough. We might focus on folks who are elderly or folks who might need more support, and we think we are inclined to assume that young people don't need that type of support. But actually, to participate in higher education, to participate in employment and internship, in exciting opportunities, for example, like this conference, or all the other activities around the world, to come together with the disability community, we need the same type of supports which other folks in the disability community need too. So I would suggest overall focusing into young people as well and adding those to our discussions. And additionally, I think it is very important for countries and our advocates friends in the EU countries to also help us, to those of us who are candidate countries of the EU and who are in the Council of Europe region and who do not exactly have the same European protection when it comes to disability rights, and also do a little bit political activism, so we make sure that the European funding that gets into, for example, into Turkey is not used by ableist rehabilitation organizations, but rather than used by disabled lads and grassroots and small organizations. To do that, we must eliminate certain barriers that prevent people from applying and accessing to EU and UN funding. For example, we must allow for applications for funds and grants to be submitted in their local languages rather than just being English, because that, for example, creates a barrier for deaf people in my country who would like to use those funds to further their advocacy, but who are not able to apply because they weren't able to learn English, and there is additional barriers into learning English when you are deaf, and English is not your main language, of course. And also, we need to discuss the legal capacity of disabled people around the Council of Europe region. We need to eliminate legal guardianships and conservatorships. And this, I can speak from my personal experience and from my legal education, that I know those legal guardianship laws and systems can be very, very limiting and could prevent a disabled person hiring and choosing their own personal assistants, because oftentimes these rules and systems completely take away your signature and your right to have a say in the proceedings. Your signature doesn't mean anything. Your testimony doesn't mean anything. You can't be a viable party of an employment contract, for example, either as an employee or as an employer of a personal assistance, perhaps. So we need to adapt those, and together, supporting by one another, we need to focus on making Europe-wide, and in fact, Council of Europe-wide changes to these laws, and we need to advocate for one another, and we need to strengthen our cross-border participation, because I know for those of us who are in the more developing countries and who are on the more eastern side of Europe needs the expertise and the established disability advocacy culture of those of you who are in the West and who have more established systems of social supports, disability rights, and understanding. I hope I could offer a perspective today. Again, I thank European Network on Independent Living for creating the Freedom Drive this year. Due to visa matters and passport inequality, I couldn't have been with you in person, although I would love that. I thank everyone who've created this conference, and I wish a very productive and very inspiring and very strengthening conference to those of you all.
Thank you very much, Melike. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for the recommendation, and we definitely come back to that one and hope to have you with us next time. So the next speaker is Viera. Are you online with us?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I am.
So
Hello,
please,
hello.
Viera, share with
Yes.
us your thought on how we can strengthen the European independent living movement. The floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and having this opportunity to speak as a member of EUCAP, which is European Council of Autistic People. This is a organization which has been founded and is led by autistic individuals themselves. So this mission, our mission, aligns closely with the principles of independent living and self-determination, which we are discussing today. I would say that autism on its own is intersectional because it could be part of the lived experience of person with any other disability, may it be physical, mental, or sensory. So I find it quite a very specific topic from this point of view. And of course, it is very important to have the possibility to speak and recognize and address the unique challenges faced by the autistic people. In approach to disability rights and the approach to disability rights and autism acceptance also varies greatly across Europe. As I am from Slovakia, which is Eastern Central European country, we still can see the prevalence of the medical model of disability, which focuses on fixing individuals rather than adapting the society. This is why I was very happy to hear from the Validity Foundation this morning that we could also reach them for support and even challenge the EU level on this because it is really tough sometimes in my country. Generally, we often lack comprehensive data on autism, making it difficult to develop effective policies. Moreover, the political culture in some of our Central European countries has yet not fully embraced the promotion of equal rights for disabled individuals, including autistic people. This disparity is additional obstacle for achieving independent living across Europe. We also have to acknowledge that the voices of the autistic people are often overlooked, especially on matters that directly affect them. This exclusion is particularly evident in discussion about interventions and support services. So it is important to ensure that autistic individuals are at the forefront of conversations shaping policies and practices that impact their lives. We can also talk or mention two groups of people here because there is a bit different situation with adults or seniors and young people, because adult people did not very often achieve proper diagnostic, neither the support, as the autism is diagnosed in only few decades. And misdiagnosis led to severe negative impacts to their lives in families, workplace, or in social services and gaining support. And for young people who are more likely to be diagnosed in earlier stages of their lives, now receiving also more services like is also early childhood support or inclusive education measures. Anyway, there is lack of these programs as well, and there is a threat of potentially harmful approaches used or being favorized, as is the ABA approach and so on. EUCAP, by the way, did a survey and position statement on ABA from the point of view of autistic people in Europe, and you can find it on our site. Furthermore, we face also significant challenge in the lack of intersectional perspectives in disability rights and policies. The needs of autistic individuals, particularly those from marginalized communities, are frequently overlooked. This extends to crucial areas such as gender-based violence, where the specific vulnerabilities of women and girls with autism are not adequately addressed in legislation nor in approaches combating violence. The autism in women is also very often misdiagnosed, overlooked, and facing specific situations of, and they are facing specific situations of violence, connected to their abilities to communicate their needs. We can mention here that also the directive of combating violence against women failed to include the needs of women and girls with disabilities, but, for example, but not criminalizing forced sterilization. And UCAP also had this project on violence on women with autism, which you can also find on our page. And it is also necessary to mention and speak up for LGBTQ plus people with autism who face serious threat to denial of, for example, the gender affirmative care if they are autistic as well. We also face, as in many other countries, the insufficient funding for community services provided by NGOs. These organizations are often majority-led or non-autistic-led organizations, and they shoulder the responsibility of supporting independent living, but are overwhelmed due to lack of sustainable and long-term funding. And this situation leaves many autistic individuals without the necessary support to live independently. It is also connected in a general view of lack of autistic-led perspectives in research concerning autism and a lack of funding for it, where we are seeking for participatory research free of conflicts of interest and informed and supervised by autistic people's experience. I myself am a late diagnosed autistic professional psychologist. I was working for many years to bring the person-centered approach to institutions for disabled people in Slovakia, as I also had a younger sister who has Down syndrome. This was why it was my interest to help. These institutions really failed to institutionalize quickly enough. And now in this period of my life, I am advocating for children, youth, and adults with autism in Slovakia and Europe. I was really happy to hear the examples of good practices of incredible increasing quality of life for people who has been listened to and finally got the power to manage their ways of living and support to themselves with the support of the peers and professionals and the community. So I believe that this is one of the main challenges that we really adopt and implement these kind of approaches to people with autism and also other disabilities. So this is really what I would love to ensure for every child, every young person and adult, not only with autism, but also with other disabilities, to have the respectful, empowering services based on their wishes, interests, and preferences, and not even being taken the independency and power from them in decisions about their own life, along with the comprehensive protection against abuse or violence. So this is how I believe we can really ensure equal and independent life across Europe. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Viera. Again, we will come definitely back to all those points. But first, we'll now hear Nick Morgan, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I've been told I have to stand exactly here. so I'm not going to move. Morning. First off, just a huge thank you to ENIL for inviting me to speak today. It's an absolute privilege and an honour. They are primarily responsible for the setting up of an organisation that I'm CEO of, and that's Euro Youth Mental Health. So just to introduce myself a bit, we were asked to talk a bit about intersectionality and looking at disabilities through that lens in this session. And so my name's Nick. I'm from Swansea. I'm in South Wales. I'm a punk, a father. My pronouns are he, them. I'm a youth worker by trade and a Welsh rugby fan. And from a visual description as well, I'm quite short. I'm wearing DM skinny jeans and a hat because I've had hair consciousness ever since it all disappeared. But that's because I dyed it too many colours in said punk phase when I was younger. The reason I tell you a bit about that, that's my personal tapestry, which we all have. I think we're all here to talk about and fight for rights in particular issues, but it's about particular issues, but the fact that for us individually, it's all different as well. We all need something different. So our needs and support that we need are different. So Euro Youth Mental Health, we work with and for young people to raise up young people's voices, to promote mental health and support those impacted by mental ill health across Europe. We've been going for about 7 years now. We're a very small team. We do a lot of advocacy work with young people across Europe, and we're also on a lot of research projects, well, not a lot, a few research projects where we are the kind of youth engagement, co-production, participation specialists. And thinking about how mental health comes into this, in 2019, with ENIL, we delivered a study week with the Council of Europe, looking at mental health as a disability issue, which has been touched on a bit today, and how mental ill health or diagnosis is classed as a disability, but lots of people, especially people who maybe don't want the stigmas that are attached to all of these different things, impacts those maybe people that come in forward and asking for help. I myself am diagnosed with clinical depression and general anxiety disorder as well, another part of my tapestry. So often, have to have certain things, reasonable practices put in place for my work. So I might work at abstract hours, is what I tell people. The reason I set up Euro Youth Mental Health is I did a master's way back in 2013, where I compared the kind of mental health support for young people living with diagnosed depression, one organisation in Croatia and one organisation in the UK, and their road to independence, which is what ENIL is all about and what we're all striving for. One of the biggest issues I had with that piece of work was defining what independence meant, or being independent meant. Frustratingly. So it wasn't the other stuff I did and found out and read about. And it's about having, what does that mean? So for different people, it'll mean something entirely different. So for some of us, it'll mean having complete autonomy. For some of us, it'll mean having the ability to choose what and when I want support. And for others, it'll be, I need to be with people and need that support a lot of the time, if not all of the time. So in 2019 with ENIL, as I mentioned, we talked about studying mental health as a disability. And some of the outcomes that came from that was that that needed to be talked about more. Mental health or invisible disabilities that has come up today in conversations sometimes are not talked about, well, aren't talked about enough. And we believe that individual governments need to remember that when they're talking about disabilities and independence, that it covers everyone. The conversation about personal assistance earlier was quite interesting as well, because something we do only on a small scale, that's purely to the size of our organisation, is we try to, if young people with quite difficult, complex needs want to travel to something like this, but maybe have complex needs in relation to a bipolar diagnosis or schizophrenia diagnosis, we try and get funding to provide a youth worker to go with them and support them as and when needed. You know, they're kind of there if they need them, but if they don't, great. We've only done it a few times, but I think it's similar. It was inspired by meeting ENIL and working with ENIL and learning about personal assistance. So intersectionality and thinking about how we can strive to ensure that everyone is able to live independently. You know, something I looked up earlier is the adults with disabilities report experiencing frequent mental health distress almost 5 times as often as adults without disabilities. That's adults, not young people, which is where my focus is. And from the beautifully named Centre for Disease Control and Prevention, which I don't like the word disease in these conversations, which often comes up in mental health as well. I've done a lot of work in health inclusion with young people, and I've done projects on epilepsy and diabetes type 1 as well recently. And one of the big conversations we're often having, and it's come up earlier today as well, is how can we reach those people who don't have the opportunity to come to things like this, or even know about it, or be aware of it. And that could be people from kind of the marginalization or fringes of society, potentially, due to individual countries' stereotypes or oppression. The previous speaker talked about the LGBTQ community, and you can look at thinking about cultures and societal norms that maybe might stigmatize or have different opinions and ideas around mental health than others. So we at Euro Youth Mental Health have been doing a piece of work called Painting the Picture, helping and supporting organizations such as the World Health Organization and kind of think about how they're engaging young people from a variety of communities. In my experience, and I'm just talking here, sort of these opportunities and these events are predominantly attended and involved with white middle class people, young people. That's through no fault of their own, but it's the areas and the kind of spaces and the communities that they're in. Often those opportunities are kind of put out and they're there to see them. What we try to do, and are trying to do much better, because we are by no means perfect at this, is being proactive in going out and trying to speak to communities who maybe don't fit the standard or the norm, quotes, of a particular country or a particular setting. So trying to reach out to organizations that work with Roma young people or black young people or LGBTQ young people in that work specifically with those young people who are accessing services like that. So proactively reaching out is really important. Sorry, I've just lost my last little bit of information. Yep, that's gone. So I was asked to come up. So some of the bits that we were asked to talk about today was: is there something missing from the pillars of living independently? And I did write something down that seems to have skipped my slides. But basically, I think there's something about a pillar being discussed, or about us being able to live how we are choosing to preference to live independently. As well as those preferences that we can't decide as we are growing up in this world and as we're living in this world. And just to finish, really, I think there's been a lot of talk today about being free and the freedom to live independently. And I'm going to share a quote from one of my favorite philosophers. He's a love or hate him type of guy, Albert Camus, who says that the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. And I encourage you to rebel. I encourage us all to rebel, because it shouldn't be something that we have to rebel about, but we do. And I think someone mentioned earlier how we are often so too polite or don't want to do something because it's a hassle. Be a hassle. Be a hassle, challenge, make things awkward for people, call people out when it's not right and they're missing something, they're not including someone, to make sure that everyone is included. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. And definitely we should stop being too kind. And yeah, rebellism is also part from activism. So we have a little bit time over now, so I open the floor to the audience if somebody wants to complete what we have heard right now or react or have a question to one of the speakers.
My voice again. Hello, 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 Jamie. No, thanks everybody for everything you said. It's been interesting. And Nick, I haven't met you, but great to hear you. That was interesting and great. The last point that you said about representation is so important. In Stockholm, we've been working 7 years now with people with migrants with disabilities, and we did have a group with us the last time, but this time we kind of missed out on trying to find the funding and they didn't come. But it's really to put that first and to make sure. I just had a SMS saying, oh, the one girl was so disappointed she wasn't able to come. And it is. I mean, we really have to make a point of that from the leadership of ENIL to try to get as much representation. It's tiring to go to meetings on migration and there's only white middle-class people, as you say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you to everyone. That was great as well. James Cawley here from Ireland. I just wanted to ask a question. I found it really interesting around the intersectionality piece. And I suppose in an Irish context, Ireland is not really up on the intersectionality piece, if that makes sense. So quite often we're seen as just disabled people and not husbands, wives, lovers, friends, co-workers, taxpayers, etc. So I just want to ask, do you have any advice when you are talking about intersectionality, and particularly when we're trying to showcase that to our elected representatives? Because quite often in the equality, diversity, and inclusion space, sometimes disability is not well discussed, in my opinion, particularly in an Irish context. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any of the speakers, well, those online also, Melike or Viera, do you want to react on this? Yeah? Or Nick can start, yeah.
Does this work? Oh, it does work. Cool. Thank you for the question. Quite a big question. We can speak later as well if you want. I think it's, I know it's quite, no, it's not simple. One of the first things I'd suggest is kind of being the change you want to see. So I think thinking about workplace in that type of environment, almost reminding people that you're not just the workplace. Or I'm sure they know you're taxpayers, by the way. But everything else, as you say, I think there's something about keeping that conversation going in the space. And this may sound a bit on the nose, but training and encouraging training and talking about it more where you can. If your government and those sorts of spaces aren't talking about it enough, there's something about trying to raise that platform yourselves or with other organizations or where you work, so that people are reminded that you're not just one thing. We all have many different hats. I literally do have many different hats, but we all have different elements of our being, and it's important that wherever you are, that is remembered.
Thank you. Melike, you want to add something, please?
Yes, I would like to respond to that question as someone who has a couple of intersectional identities, being a young Muslim disabled woman who is also a law student. When I come across situations like this, I often try to showcase a bit of my personality through humor or through other means, that I try to make sure that the people I'm trying to influence and do advocacy, and as you've said, these people could be politicians, these people could be, government officials or members of other civil society organizations. I always try to make sure that I put myself out there just as a person and try to show that disability is not flat, it is not single dimensional. All of us who have disabilities also who have many other hats, many other roles. And when you think connect with people from humor and show them you are also having some of the struggles of life that they also have, because we are all human and we have all same things, similar things in connection and in commonality with one another. And also, I try to also highlight that we exist everywhere, and you being not disabled at the moment is, just the way of life is, and you will become disabled if you're lucky and privileged to live long enough. And to remind people of that, the disabled people are not aliens, are not from the outside this world, and we are the part of the normal human diversity that there is. And, again, one day if you're lucky to live that long enough, you will eventually join the community, and to see the disability as not a matter of, just some chosen people who are given or quote unquote maybe cursed with a disability, but rather than it is something that all of us can and eventually will have, and we are all normal. And I often try to talk about my hobbies, my interests, and my education, and you oftentimes see people, kind of lowering their guards and talking to you about their favorite shows, or, if they have been, in the same background as me in the college, they tell, I've struggled with that course too. And then a moment later, you feel yourself feeling again equal and the same and similar with you, and they don't feel intimidated to speak with you anymore. So I think humanizing yourself, being humorous, and being able to, have a laugh about all of these conversations and going at it lighthearted could help. I hope I was able to answer your question from my perspective.
Thank you, Melike. Yeah. Viera, do you want to add something?
Yes, I can add something a little bit. It is also important to send a message, maybe also on the European level, or during such events like this one, that it is not only, it should not be only the burden on the people with disabilities that they should prove like their valuable, that they are valuable part of the society. We need allies. It is one part of it, and it is also like the responsibility of the society, and we should in some ways also call for this responsibility. It is good to have these coping mechanisms such as humor or some gathering with people with similar experience, but at the same time it is very important to really sometimes maybe provoke or rebel, or even like really send very serious and very strong messages that it is also the responsibility of the society and of the people who are able to, in their current situation, and who are governing or leading the society and like mainstream institutions, because it really is. So on one hand, we need some skills and mechanisms how to deal with it ourselves, and also, of course, meeting each other and having all these important tools like assistance or peer support or anything is crucial. But also this not only awareness, but also real actions and positive actions, such Nick was talking about, like from the part of the mainstream society is very important.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think there are many people can testimony and just encourage to think out of the box, and yeah, just to show, yeah, I can tell from my own story, being colored woman, working in the engineering sector. You even don't want to know what it is about. But I think if you really want to address intersectionality, we cannot do it without also claiming to work on intersections, on all the other intersections, and at the same time apply a kind of twin track approach. It's approaching disability specific with the need that we, with what we need to be able to participate as equal level as others, but then also using our disability to mainstream it in other areas. So we then have, again, double roles to play. And also to remind community that we need to mainstream disability all across all the areas of life. But that will bring us then to the last part. Is there still somebody in the audience who would like to speak or to add something? Yeah. Go ahead.
Just one quick question. Vera, when you were talking, you talked about the ABA approach, and I don't know what that is. Could I just understand that? Thank you.
Yes, it is applied behavioral approach, applied behavioral approach, which is a set of tools used to train or educate particularly people with autism. And really after like decades of this kind of approach to be like preferred and highlighted as the only way how to help them to like be included into society and to gain skills. We are learning a lot about like having this approach being abusive in many ways. It doesn't give the people the power to say no or to choose what way they would like to be treated. It is just like they are so these are the main challenges in this approach, and several countries already are like withdrawing the general support for this kind of approach in training and or including autistic people. It is like a very ableistic approach from many point of view. Yeah.
Thank you, Viera, for explaining. We still have one hand up.
I'm just adding to the answer that Viera gave about ABA. I spoke this morning about positive behavior support. That's based on ABA. ABA is, or applied behavior analysis, is behavior modification. It's about training people to behave in a way that they fit within society. It's included people having star charts. So you get star charts if you behave in a certain way. I've even heard people being used to be trained by clickers. So if you do a certain thing in the right way, you get a click. Just like training dogs, its basis. I could get really emotional about this because it's really close to my heart. But its basis is how Pavlov used to train the dogs with those first experiments on animals. And there's a huge movement in the UK at the moment against it. It's been put out across the UK by NHS England and others as the way to do things, but we're all rebelling against it because it's like treating people like animals. There's a major report being put together by the National Autism Stakeholder Group, which is gaining traction and is challenging the use of PBS, positive behaviour support, and ABA in England because they're saying it's completely against people's rights. People need to be able to behave how they are, and people need to understand that when people are having difficulties, they're showing distress. It's not about training people how to behave to fit in. And yeah, there's a whole lot in there. And if people want more information, I'm very happy to add to it.
how awful, and even animals has right. So I hope definitely that it can be stopped. Okay, Melika, you raised your hand.
Yes, just want to quickly add a point about ABA, and I will give this with a trigger warning. And actually, I've learned during my partnerships in the US, ABA can vary from, as many of you mentioned, from clickers to dog training like activities, from restraining kids physically, and even in the US, use of electric shocks in one specific center called Judge Rutherberg Center in Massachusetts. And that is a very, again, very challenging subject for all of us because it means treating autistic and neurodivergent people, especially kids, less than human, even less than animal. And I just wanted to add that there is also a more deeper and more violent nature of ABA. Oftentimes is not discussed at the European level, but I know it's happening across the world, especially in the US, the use of electric shocks and other very inhumane methods. So I thought for those of you who might be interested in that, that might be beneficial to add.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's hope that this terrible treatment will stop as soon as possible. Okay, so thank you, Melike, thank you, Viera, and thank you, Nick. And without further ado, now we are going back to the pillars of independent living. We heard a lot of what was needed, what is missing. We heard also a lot about the barriers, but we had also many recommendations to take into consideration. So I think to be really able to live in the community, we have a big matrix that's change in time, change related to age, change related to preferences, change to trends, change by seasons. But anyway, we need a frame, and all started in Washington, and now we are here in Brussels. So I'm honored to give the floor to Teodor Mladenov, who will explain a little bit how the pillars can be used and explored.
Thank you, Nadia. Good. So, hello everyone again. Really privileged to be here. I'm a tired white man, and as most of you know, I'm a father as well, a bit irresponsible father because I took my child out of school to take her to the Freedom Drive, but I think that for her this must have been much better than this 3 days lost in school. For me, it was really amazing. I've been to 4 Freedom Drives so far, and I think this one was the best one. I learned so much, and I hope I'll be able to use my academic white male privilege to spread the word about the great things that I learned here. So what I want to tell you about is something that we did with Nadia actually, and we discussed some ideas about updating the pillars of independent living in Washington DC earlier this year at the annual conference of the National Council on Independent Living, which is the umbrella organization of the Centers for Independent Living in the United States. And so my presentation today is is based on this discussion. And I'm sorry that I may sound a bit kind of off topic, but I'm really tired now. So, but I'll do my best. What are the pillars of independent living? I'm sure everyone in the room knows, but just as a way of a very short, very quick definition, they could be defined as the key supports and accommodations needed to make independent living possible. And we had a lot of discussion these 3 days about the importance of not overemphasizing one of the pillars, and there was a lot of discussion of the importance of not overemphasizing personal assistance and so on. And the idea of the pillars is really kind of a response to this, and a good response, I think. And the other good thing about the pillars is that it's an organic concept. It emerged out of the independent living movement and has developed within the movement. The most popular list of pillars has been created by British independent living organizations in the 90s. It includes 12 pillars, and I have provided a list on the slide. So it includes accessibility, transportation, technical aid, housing, personal assistance, education, income, employment, information, advocacy, peer support, and access to healthcare. Now that there are other definitions of what the pillars are, and but I think this is the most kind of popular one. The idea has a longer history than this. It goes back to the core services provided in the first Center for Independent Living, the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley in the 1970s, and the predecessor of the first CAO, which was the Physically Disabled Students Program at the University of California in Berkeley. Now, I was also asked to say a few words about why the pillars are important. Three things can really be emphasized here. The first is that the pillars create a shared understanding about independent living at quite a practical level, which is very useful and makes advocacy activities focused and coherent. The second reason, again, relates to what we discussed a lot over these 3 days, the importance of avoiding single-issue campaigning. The pillars convey the message that independent living support should be comprehensive and should follow a holistic approach. And so in this way, they help contextualize single-issue campaigning. I mean, it's not something. It's obvious that independent living organizations are poorly financed and struggling with resources. So single-issue campaigning is kind of unavoidable at certain points in time. But it's also important to put this single-issue campaigning in wider context and be aware of other issues that are also important to make our single issues work. For example, for many disabled people, even the most accessible environment would not be enough and cannot compensate for lack of personal assistance and technical aids, and therefore advocacy for accessible environment needs to be complemented by advocacy for personal assistance and technical aids. I mean, this could be also said about personal assistance. If you only have access to personal assistance, then personal assistance could kind of become a way to complement the family budget to help people cope with poverty, basically, and this kind of defies the purpose of personal assistance or direct payments or personal budgets. Contextualizing single-issue campaigning also helps keep the movement diverse and hospitable to people with different kinds of impairments and support needs. And there is also this great benefit of the pillars helping with watchdog activities. They help monitor disability policies, identify gaps, suggest corrective action, and so in this sense they are also very important. Now, why, where does the need to update the pillars come from? The history of the independent living movement suggests that the pillars have never been kind of a set kind of list, static. They have always been in a state of development. The activists in Berkeley, the pioneers, they started with 4 core services: personal assistance, housing, technical aids, and individual advocacy. And these 4 core services reflected their needs and the historical situation that they found themselves in as university students with physical impairments, trying to live independently on the campus of an American university in the 1960s. Very specific kind of set of circumstances and positionality. As the movement quickly expanded in the 70s, it also included wider community, people with sensory and intellectual disabilities, so the list of the key independent living supports and accommodations expanded as well. It is therefore very important to keep the pillars in line with the current state of independent living advocacy and the current state of the world and the country in which we find ourselves in. In Washington, D.C., I and Nadia discussed some of the current developments and some of the challenges that call for updating or revising the pillars. And this some of these issues include, firstly, the intersectional perspective. It was clear to me that intersectionality is becoming key for independent living advocacy. It is increasingly important to adopt this intersectional perspective. The leadership of the independent living movement is becoming increasingly diverse, which contributes to the growing awareness that the restrictions on disabled people's self-determination work in neuronormative, gendered, racialized, and ageist and homophobic ways. ENIL's advocacy has responded to these developments and has become increasingly sensitive to intersectional issues over the last decade, I would say. The other thing, and it was very prominent yesterday in the parliament, relates to the current state of the world. The current state of the world makes it increasingly important to think about ways to ensure independent living support and accommodations in emergency situations such as armed conflicts, natural disasters, pandemics, and so on. And the subsequent reconstruction efforts. It's very important for the reconstruction efforts to take into account independent living philosophy and independent living pillars. And the third thing, the third kind of trend, if you wish, is the globalization of independent living. It started as an American thing. It's no more an American thing. The spread of independent living ideas throughout the world, and particularly in the countries of the global south, makes it increasingly important to think about what social scientists call decolonizing independent living, which would effectively mean to engage with local knowledges and practices regarding self-determination. And there are local knowledges and practices regarding self-determination. Self-determination is a universal thing. It's not an American invention. It's not a liberal individualist invention. It's a universal value. But although the idea of self-determination is universal, there is a need to develop culturally sensitive and locally appropriate independent living ideas and practices. On the basis of this considerations, sorry about that. Thank you. On the basis of these considerations and this thinking about what's happening in the world and how the independent living advocacy is developing, in Washington DC, together with Nadia, we argued for considering some of the following pillars as kind of updates or additions to the 12 ones that I already mentioned. The first is access to supported decision making. The suggestion, I mean, we discussed a lot supported decision making in these 3 days. The suggestion is related to adopting an intersectional perspective as well. Denial of legal capacity on the basis of impairment is rooted in neuronormativity and is often racialized, gendered, and ageist. In other words, it's more likely for disabled adults to be deprived of their legal capacity if they are neurodiverse from ethnic minorities, female, and older people. ENIL rejects the denial of legal capacity and promotes supported decision-making systems. But as we learned on Monday from Terezia's presentation, there is a long road to travel to make supported decision-making a reality. The other thing to consider is related to knowing, creating knowledge of independent living history, philosophy, and organizing. This was again an issue that emerged several times during these 3 days. Both the global spread of independent living and generational changes in independent living leadership make it necessary to preserve the awareness of independent living history and the core principles of independent living. Where did it all come from and why? While also remaining open to new developments and local knowledges. The other thing that we discussed relates to support for sexual and so I don't have much time, but we also discussed support for sexual and reproductive rights as an important emphasis. Access to internet and digital technology, it's kind of implied in the pillar on technical assistance and the pillar of on information, but it needs to be kind of emphasized more strongly, considering the importance of digital. We all live in a digital world now, but some people don't have access to it, so they are very strongly excluded. Access to legal aid, we heard today about the importance of legal aid, and also perhaps we should add strategic litigation. And support for transitions, including transitions to adulthood, higher education, employment, transitions from the parental home, and transitions from institutional care. This is what I wanted to tell you, and I would like to finish with a call for international and intersectional solidarity amongst the multiple crises that we are facing currently. The hardly won struggles for independent living remain very fragile without their expansion, internationalization, and intersectionalization. This is one of my favorite quotes from a Swedish cooperative of people with intellectual impairments called YAK, and they have expressed this brilliantly. For our own sake, we must improve the world. So this is how I would like to finish. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Teodor. Thank you. And it highlights once again that much must still be done. We should not forget also the role of the media. So the impact of the media on us. So most of the time, they're showing people with disability always heroes, always vulnerables. So media play also a big role. We can develop many pillars of independent living. We can develop a basement for independent living, but without being accepted and respected within the community, we will not be able to live independently. So we need alliance in different sectors, in different areas. So it is food for thought. It is homework for all of us to go back there in the world, showing them that we have the same rights as them, but we need the adequate support to be able to do this. So this is just a kick-off. In many other countries, they still don't understand the concept of independent living. They really think that independent living is a neoliberal way of thinking. They think it's not possible for all of them. They think it's only for people with physical disabilities. So I think it's really up to us to show the whole world, in fact, that no, it's possible with the right support and from young on to start. Also, the school books need to be changed. The media need to support us. The politicians need also make legislation able. We should stop just believing in their word and their promises. We need legislation that support the right to support, that each individual, in case of failure, having access to support, that they can go to court. So access to justice is also an extra pillar. It should be affordable, available, accessible, and desirable also. So we still have many battles to win. But one good thing is I want, first of all, thank you very much, each one of you, of being here. Your energy is something that is more important than all the rest, that we can go back home and say, well, yes, that is something that we all believe in. It's a common thought. And so we all go back home with something like, oh, let's go for community for all. We are not alone. So whenever you come back from frustration, from a lobby work, of something that you have done and you did not succeed, just think about, oh, there are other people around the world, they also have the same battle and they didn't give up, so we will also continue. So thank each one of you, those who followed online, those who are here in person, those who left already. Thank you also for the ENIL team, for the support and for the preparations and the facilitating that made us able all to be here. Thank you for the sign language interpretation. Thank you for the captioning. Thank you also for Uloba and still for the co-financing to make this Freedom Drive what it was. I hope that it will not be stopping here, that we can continue in between the next Freedom Drive, work on also the demands. We should not forget the demands, that we can say that we had impact with our demands, we made a little bit change, and that from step by step, I'm sure that we can make change, and yeah, we just need to join forces. In any case, if any of you have any feedback to send to ENIL, please don't hesitate. Positive or negative remarks, we learn from it. It's always a learning session. And I'm very grateful for having all of you here. So keep the power, swift the power, and stay powerful from now on until the next Freedom Drive. Thank you to all, and a big thank you out to Ines. She was the brain behind all this, practically, physically, mentally. So a big thank you for Ines. And all the others. So thank you. So I think it's safe journeys back. We have heard a lot. We saw a lot. So keep networking, keep in contact with each other, and see you then in 2 years. Bye, everybody.